Alright guys, welcome back to another amazing episode of Christianity over Islam with Sam Sherman. This time around as he explained why Jesus said the Father is greater than him in John chapter 14 verse 28. Let's watch this amazing video to get more details.
John 14:28. Let me read the context, folks. I mean, we've addressed this over and over again, but again, let's do it again. John 14:28. You heard me say to you, I go away and will come to you. If you love me, you would have rejoiced because I go to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. So he says, rejoice that I'm going to the Father because the Father is greater than I. That statement will only make sense when you read it in its immediate and overall context. But first off, if you want to know what Jesus did not mean, when he says the Father is greater than I, he doesn't mean the Father is better than me ontologically. That the Father is God, I'm not, I'm a creature, so he's infinitely greater, better than me. How do I know that's not what the Lord is saying? In the same chapter, John 14, verses 12 to 14. John 14, 12 to 14. I'm just going to stick with the same chapter. And by the way, it's ironic. This is the very gospel that begins by introducing Christ as the eternal, uncreated Word of God the Father, the one who created all things and brought all things into being, who gives life to all things, who became flesh for our redemption. Let's ignore the prologue and assume that John is going to contradict himself some 13 chapters later. But with that said, John 14, verses 12 to 14. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who believes in me will also do the works that I do. And greater works than these will he do, because I go to the Father. Guys, pay attention to that. This is John 14, 12 to 14. You will do greater works. Same Greek word, same English word. It's meizon in Greek. The works I do, you'll be doing, but you'll be doing greater works than these. Now, Jesus cannot mean that you're going to be doing better miracles than me, works that are superior in quality than the works I've been doing. He clearly means you're going to do the same works I've been doing, but a greater number. So right here in the chapter itself, the word greater doesn't mean something or someone who's greater, that's greater in quality, ontologically, but greater in volume, in number, in position and status. But now he explains why. Folks, he explains why they'll be able to do greater works than he's been doing because I go to the Father. So the first question Christians should ask, what's the connection between the disciples doing greater number of the same works that Jesus did while he was on earth and him going to the Father? 13 and 14 gives you the answer. Whatever you ask in my name, I will do it, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. So Jesus says, when I go to the Father, that's when you'll ask in my name, and I from heaven will hear your prayers, and I will be the one doing the works through you per your request. Now, before I comment on this, John 14:23, same chapter, John 14:23, Jesus answered him, if a man loves me, he will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our home with him. So folks, let's break this down. Jesus just said he's the hearer of prayer. Pray, I will answer your prayers. And Jesus claimed to be present personally with every true believer to the same extent and to the same degree that the Father is present with every true believer. This assumes that Jesus must be omnipresent. For him to dwell in communion and fellowship with every true believer, he must be omnipresent. He must be omniscient. He must know who the true believers are from the fake Christians. And he must be omnipotent, all-powerful, in order to be able to answer all requests, no matter how many people are asking him, no matter where they're at, and what those requests happen to be. By golly, last time I checked, to be omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, and the hearer of prayer makes you God. But now notice, folks, though he's claiming the attributes of God, the functions of God, he's still not the Father. He's distinct from the Father, and yet one with him in the Father's ability to do the very things that Jesus says he can do, which are things that only God can do. And this is the chapter you want to quote to try to prove that Jesus is saying the Father is better than me in essence? No. It means the Father is greater in terms of status, because while Jesus remains on earth, he's in a state of humility. He's assumed the status of a servant. And he's saying to them, if you love me, you'll rejoice, because as long as I remain here, the Father will be greater in status. But when I go to the Father, that will change. Now, how do I know that will change? John 17, verse 5. And now, Father, glorify thou me in thine own presence with the glory which I had with thee before the world was. 2 points. Jesus says, glorify me in your presence. When I return to heaven, the glory you possess is the glory you'll bestow on me in your presence. And secondly, that's the glory I had already with you before the world was created. So Jesus affirms two things. He was there personally alongside the Father before the creation of the world, and he was there alongside the Father in the same glory, and that's the glory he set aside, but he'll regain, and that's what he meant. If I remain on earth, the Father's greater in status because the Father's in heavenly glory. But when I go to the Father, I'll no longer be in the state of humiliation where sinners beat me and whip me to the point of death and nail me to the cross. I'll be basking in the same glory of the Father, where all the inhabitants of heaven will behold my glory and know I'm the Son of God who's one with the Father. And then finally, this passage proves that Islam is false and Muhammad is an antichrist. Why? Because Jesus said the Father, and he's the Son who shares the same glory that the Father possesses, all of which Muhammad denied, because Muhammad said Allah is not the Father, Jesus is not the Son. So thank you, Adnan, for quoting a verse that proves Muhammad is an antichrist under the wrath of Christ. Thank you, David.
Sam, I did want to add something.
Guys, before we continue with this beautiful video, I think Sam Shaman is trying to explain the reason why Jesus said that the Father is greater than him in John chapter 14 verse 28, and he said that Jesus doesn't mean that the Father is greater or better than him in context. Rather, it is because while Jesus is still on earth, he remained on earth, so he assumed the position of humility. So let's continue with this amazing video to get more details.
To that whole discussion in John 14 starts off with Jesus, as far as I can tell, putting on a little play for his followers. So we read John chapter 13. Jesus puts on this little display for everyone. Now watch what happens, ladies and gentlemen. It says, now before the feast of the Passover, Jesus, knowing that his hour had come, that he would depart out of the world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. During supper, the devil having already put into the heart of Judas Iscariot, the son of Simon, to betray him, Jesus, knowing that the Father had given all things into his hands, and that he had come forth from God and was going back to God. Notice, Jesus, knowing that where he had come from and where he's going back to, where he's about to go back to, got up from supper and laid aside his garments, and taking a towel, he girded himself. He got up from supper, he gets up, he goes, he takes away his normal garments, puts those aside, wraps himself in a towel. Then he poured water into the basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel with which he was girded. So he came to Simon Peter. He said to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Jesus answered and said to him, what I do you do not realize now, but you will understand later. Peter said to him, never shall you wash my feet, right? That was considered a slave's work. Never shall you wash my feet. Jesus answered him, if I do not wash you, you have no part with me. Simon Peter said to him, Lord, then wash not only my feet, but also my hands and my head. Jesus said to him, he who has bathed needs only to wash his feet, but is completely clean. And you are clean, but not all of you. For he knew the one who was betraying him. For this reason he said, not all of you are clean. So when he had washed their feet and taken his garments and reclined at the table again, he said to them, do you know what I have done to you? Now notice that part. When he had washed their feet and taken his garments again and reclined at the table, then he said, do you know what I've done to you? Think about what Jesus does here, right? Because this whole passage that's about to follow this is about Jesus lowering himself into the world so he could do the work that he came to do and then return to where he was before. So notice what Jesus does right in front of his disciples. He takes off his normal clothes, wraps himself in a towel, and becomes like a slave who would wash your feet in someone's house. Then he washes their feet, and then he goes back and he puts his normal garments back on and says, you understand what I just did? Right? What's happening in the rest of this passage, as Sam's pointed out, is Jesus is saying, guys, do you really, have you not figured out where I came from? All right? He's claiming he is the way and the truth and the life. He entered this world because he had some stuff to do. Then he tells them that he's going away, and all his disciples are broken up. Oh no, he's going away. We can't understand. What is this? What does this mean? And he's saying, look, don't you know if I go away, I'll be able to answer your prayers. Why? He's going back to where he came from, right? In other words, he had his status, his eternal status, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and then he lowered himself, taking on the degrading form of a servant, just like he did in the little play before that, taking on the degrading form of a human servant. And then he tells his followers, guys, I'm leaving, I'm going back. And they're all broken up. And that's when he says, if you loved me, you'd be happy, because my Father's greater than I. In other words, I told you I'm going back where I came from, to the Father. You should be happy, because look at me in this state. If you really, really loved me, you would want me to be in my exalted position where I am Lord and I answer your prayers. You would be happy at that. Instead, you're all upset. It's like you'd rather keep me here than having me glorified with the glory I had from before the foundation of the world. How could, what's your problem here? So notice, ladies and gentlemen, that entire passage makes no sense if Jesus is a merely human prophet. Makes no sense. That passage makes no sense if Jesus is not the divine Son. Makes no sense.
Alright guys, I believe you watched this amazing video and you've learned something new today. From the explanation so far, what Sam Shaman was trying to say, he said that Jesus does not mean the Father is better or greater than him in context. Rather, it is because as Jesus remained on earth, he assumed the position of humility. And this is what Philippians chapter 2 verse 6 to 8 was trying to explain. He said that who, though he was in form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even the death on the cross. And then he further explained in that in this video that where Jesus, for you to grasp the full thing, what Sam was trying to say, he gave example where Jesus pulled off his garment and then girded it around his waist and then washed the foot of his servant. That is to show that he has assumed the position of a servant, and it doesn't mean that he is trying to teach his disciple humility. What it means that he has the power, but he has to submit it under humility. I don't know if you understand, but he is trying to teach his disciple power of humility. I believe you've learned something new today. Let's know what you've learned in the comment section, and please don't forget to share, to like, and also subscribe to our channel for more.